What's happening, people? It's Ryan Taylor again. Welcome back to another video on what has been a relentless, draining, crazy January transfer window that does not show any signs of slowing down anytime soon. First of all, I want to apologise, not that I've got a huge audience or following that I'm in debt to, but obviously this video in particular was meant to drop earlier in the week. So my column came out Tuesday morning at 9 AM on Express Sport. But I did have quite a heavy weekend in Newcastle with my mates. Lost my voice. Although I started to feel a bit better early doors. At the start of the week, I couldn't talk really. So put the brakes on the video. But now I feel like the right time to get a big update out there on all the stories that I've been covering this week. I've had quite a few exclusives, which we're going to delve into. But I wanted to start with Newcastle and one of the sagas that is just threatening to rumble on and on. He's a bit like Dusan Vlahovic in the sense that Diego Carlos is in the headlines pretty much every hour of the day. There's been plenty of twists and turns in this saga so far. So, the state of play. So as I understand it, Newcastle have had 2 bids rejected by Sevilla for the centre-back. He became their top defensive target once it became apparent Lille would not sell Sven Botman. £25 million was rejected a couple of weeks ago. Newcastle then upped the offer to around £30 million. But Carlos has got a release clause believed to be around £67 million. So obviously Newcastle were bidding, quite significantly below that, which is why you can sort of understand why Sevilla are not really interested in doing business with them this month. Obviously, in the summer, they're expecting to sell Jules Koundé to Chelsea, as we've discussed on here before. Furthermore, Koundé's been missing for Sevilla the past couple of games, so Carlos is the main man, and they're going for the La Liga title. They blew their game in hand on Wednesday night against Valencia. Could have closed the gap to just a point, I think, or 2 points. I think it was a point, but they drew 1-1 at Valencia. And, Sevilla are optimistic they can keep Carlos, but the noise around the deal this morning, as I understand it, is someone relayed to me with knowledge of the deal that Newcastle were getting frustrated, and I dropped an exclusive story this morning that Newcastle were considering walking away from the table. There's since been quite big developments, which I did discuss on my Twitter page last night. I know the Newcastle fans that follow me would have seen those. And that was Sky Sports' Cave Solikol was reporting that another Premier League club had matched Newcastle's offer. Now, to be honest, as I tweeted, wasn't quite sure that was the case. Not that I had knowledge of the bid, but usually what selling clubs try and do to entice a club to pay up or up their offer is they'll say another club have bid, just because it forces the other buyers into action. It makes them think, we don't want to miss out on this player. Look, we'll just pay the money and get the deal done. Now, from what I understand, Carlos wants to join Newcastle because of the money they're offering. Personal terms have already been agreed behind the scenes. So, although Sevilla want to keep Carlos, they're aware that the player wants to leave, and he's told the club that. So, where they stand is, if they're going to sell him, they'd probably rather do it sooner rather than later. But at the same time, they don't want to get a poor fee. Their idea of a decent fee is sort of upwards of £50 million. And at the moment, Newcastle are showing no signs of splashing that sort of money. They don't want to be held to ransom. Obviously, a lot of, selling clubs now know they're the richest club in the world. Furthermore, they're also desperate because they need the bodies ASAP because, we've seen the situation there. I went to the game on Saturday at St James's Park and Newcastle are poor. They're very poor, not only defensively, but they look short of ideas in attack. The thing is, I'm not even sure a couple players are going to solve it. Obviously, it will stand them in far better stead, but I think there's a lot of imbalance in the team at the moment. They're really struggling for confidence. You could feel the sort of pressure in the stadium. Once they conceded that goal, and that felt like a bad result on Saturday, drawing 1-1. They should have won that without doubt, but as we've seen on a number of occasions this season, Newcastle struggle to hold on to important leads. And, come the end of the season, these points could be, the difference between survival and relegation. So at the moment, they need bodies fast, but they also need signings that are going to fit what they're trying to do. They don't want to just throw money at every Tom, Dick and Harry. They literally need players that are going to suit the style of play and also benefit them moving forward beyond this season. Now, David Ornstein of The Athletic is now reporting that the club that has actually matched the offer with Newcastle presented to Sevilla are understood to be from London and not Arsenal. Now, I shouldn't think Chelsea would be that club, purely because at the moment they don't really need a centre-back, although that's going to change in the summer if Christensen, Rudiger and Azpilicueta leave. So they got Malang Sarr and Trevor Chalobah to kind of cover them. My strategic guess, not that I've got knowledge of this, would be maybe Tottenham or West Ham. Not sure West Ham have got that kind of money to throw at a defender right now, but Tottenham probably do. They've obviously done business with Sevilla in recent times as well, when they bought Brian Hill and sent Eric Lamela the other way, with some cash involved in that as well. So that's one to keep an eye on. But like I said, as my understanding of the situation was this morning, Newcastle were growing restless with Sevilla. Now Sevilla obviously have said, look, if you want Carlos, you need to pay up. We're not going to mess around with these 35 million pound bids for a player that's valued significantly higher than that. But now Newcastle have got a situation on their hands. How serious are they about landing Carlos if another club has entered the running? See, what I'd question as well about the other club is, if Carlos wants to join Newcastle, are they going to have to push harder to beat Newcastle to the player and pay a significant fee? Ideally for Sevilla, this is ideal territory because they can play the two interested clubs off each other and try to drive the price up. So it's going to be an interesting one. I know Newcastle do have other defensive targets in mind. James Tarkowski was one. The problem is, obviously, Burnley are a direct relegation rival. Burnley won't stand in Tarkowski's way if he wants to leave this month, because he's out of contract in the summer. However, strengthening a rival is not ideal. Obviously, Chris Wood's already gone there following the relegation clause that was triggered in the region of £25 million. Burnley won't want to do business with Newcastle again. Benoit Badiashile from Monaco, someone we've spoken about on here before, is still a target, even though he's injured at the moment. I think he's a long-term player that Newcastle were interested in bringing to St James's Park because he fits the long-term project as well as the immediate need for a defender. So that is my information on the situation. Like I said, situation's fast changing. By the time I put this video out, I'm expecting probably developments, particularly on who that club is that are interested in signing Carlos. A lot of the journalists covering Newcastle are still optimistic that they can pull off a deal. Newcastle are still optimistic, but they're kind of threatening to walk away now. I'm not quite sure, but obviously that could be a potential tactic to entice Sevilla to soften their stance as well. Just a bit more on Newcastle now. Now, two stories I've been chasing. Although they signed Chris Wood, I understand another forward is of consideration. There was reports last week that Steffi Mavididi of Montpellier was a player Newcastle were looking at. I know a lot of names have been thrown about when it comes to Newcastle, given their desperation, but from a very good source, this is legitimate interest. It's not to say a move's going to happen this January, but the player is understood to be on a list of attacking targets that align with the club's transfer strategy, which is targeting younger players that can develop but have high potential. Younger players that have also played at senior level already. Mavididi, if you don't know, came through Arsenal's youth system, then went to Juventus, had a spell with Dijon, now he's at Montpellier. Some really good numbers, and I actually replied to one Newcastle fan I was speaking to on Twitter. I kind of compare him to someone like Jared Bowen in the sense that he's a wide player who can score, very productive, but he's got that potential at 23 to kind of hit that next level, which is like, in my opinion, sort of that 12 to 15 Premier League goals a season. Really what Bowen's doing right now. So he's an interesting one. And then you've got Duvan Zapata as well, who is
was the subject of a rejected proposal to Atalanta earlier this week. It was an initial loan fee, around about £2 to £3 million, and then an option or obligation to buy at the end of the season for around £22 million. So the total package was about £25 million. Atalanta not even entertaining that. Zapata's one of their talisman. He's hit some really good numbers over the last 3 seasons. Inter had a look at him last summer as a potential replacement for Romelu Lukaku. Can't see that happening, to be honest, unless a big bid goes in. The other one is Robin Gosens, who's the left back at Atalanta. Plays more left wing back or left midfield. Was excellent at Euro 2020. I know Leicester have had a look in the past, Barca as well. So he's an interesting one because he's definitely a target. And from what I understand, he's held positive conversations behind the scenes with Newcastle. It's just about satisfying a fee with Atalanta, and that is by no means easy. It's difficult to do at this stage. Most clubs don't really want to sell their players mid-season for obvious reasons, particularly clubs that have aspirations of Europe or trophies. And Atalanta are currently sort of in the midst of trying to secure a top 4 finish. And it's kind of up in the air at the moment. So it's an interesting one to see if Newcastle return for Gosens or even Zapata. And then just finally, you may have seen last night, particularly if you follow me on my Twitter, that Stade Reims president in France confirmed that Newcastle had a £30 million proposal rejected for young striker Hugo Ekitike. Now, the reasoning behind the decision to reject the bid was the clauses involved in the proposal. There was a lot of bonuses, shall we say, that Rem didn't consider achievable, one of which was Newcastle winning the Champions League. So the way these clubs structure some of the deals is to put add-ons in the package. So it might be like when the player makes 100 appearances for the club, Newcastle then pay Rem £3 million, something like that. So Newcastle are trying to structure a deal with loads of add-ons that kind of prevents them from paying loads of money up front. Obviously, they've kind of been a bit sneaky about it and gone with a football manager tactic of, saying when we win the Champions League or whatever, which is obviously, realistically probably never likely to happen in the next 10 years. So yeah, that's Newcastle in a nutshell. Like I said before, there is loads of stuff going on behind the scenes, so don't be surprised if you read something new in the next couple of hours. I'm not going to pretend I know it, because this is the information I've got at the moment on those 4 players. There is a few other stories that I don't have details on at the moment. Newcastle going to be interesting. 10 days to go. Desperate need of players. Clubs holding them to ransom. So we'll see what happens. Now, moving on to another exclusive that I got yesterday. The Athletic were reporting that Leeds had a £15 million bid rejected for RB Salzburg's Brenden Aaronson, a young United States international playmaker. I actually saw him play in November when I went to watch Lille Salzburg in the Champions League. Really tidy, technical player. Can see why Leeds are having a look. Aligns with their transfer policy of kind of signing these younger players that they can develop. You've seen Rafinha's value sort of triple since he signed last season. He's got to be worth around 50-60 million pounds now. So Leeds need players as well, to be honest. Their season has been really hampered by injuries. Marcelo Bielsa's had so many high-profile injuries, including Calvin Phillips and Patrick Bamford. So they need players through the door. But I reached out to a source at Salzburg in Austria, and they told me that the club are not considering selling any of their senior players just a matter of weeks out from their Champions League knockout tie with Bayern Munich. They're the first Austrian club to ever qualify for the Champions League knockout stages. This is obviously the first time they've done it in their history, and they want to give it a real go. They were excellent in the group stages. And although, many from the outside will say, you're never beating Bayern, but there's confidence and belief they can cause an upset. And to do that, they'll need to keep all of their players, including Aaronson and Karim Adeyemi. Now, Leeds fans, from what I understand, they probably will try again with a sneaky bid. There's been talk that they could raise the money to around £22 million.
And what you've got to understand with Salzburg is, although that's the stance that they're briefing at the moment, you know, these players aren't for sale. Every player has a price, and Salzburg's model is very much reliant on overturning these huge profits on these players. I discussed it in the piece, and I've spoken about it on Twitter. You know, some of these players they've developed in the past sort of 5 years, it's incredible, really. Patson Daka, I think, was a record sale to Leicester last summer at £27 million. Obviously, Erling Haaland as well, £18 million. Hwang Hee-chan to Wolves, Takumi Minamino to Liverpool, even Sadio Mane back in 2014, I think it was, to Southampton. There's been Naby Keita, Amadou Haidara, Dayot Upamecano, Dominic Szoboszlai, who went to RB Leipzig last January for 18 million. Their model was really just to turn over these players, and you can really see now, you know, even with like Adeyemi coming through and Aaronson, they're not going to stand in these players' way, but at the same time, any deal may have to wait until the end of the season. From what I understand as well, Victor Orta has been away negotiating other transfers. I think Leeds are working on other targets. Another deal was believed to be in the pipeline. So I would expect incomings at Ellen Road by the time the transfer window closes. Obviously, the win at West Ham has helped them massively. It's a massive confidence boost. They were sort of getting dragged into that sort of awkward territory where if one of the sides down the bottom put together 2 or 3 wins, you know, Leeds could get dragged into it. But the win at West Ham was massive. And, you know, with a few signings, I should think they should be all right. Speaking of teams near the bottom, Burnley, from what I understand, are in the market for Mislav Oršić, a player who is so good to watch. You might remember last season when Dinamo Zagreb dumped Tottenham out of the Europa League. He was at the heart of it, scored an unbelievable hat-trick. It's not the first time he's sort of put his name in the shop window. I know Slaven Bilic was looking at an £8 million deal 2 years ago in January 2020. Deal didn't quite happen. He also scored a belter, I think, this season in the Champions League, in the Europa League group stages against West Ham. He's a wide player who can play anywhere across the front three, lethal shooting, quick. I think he's had a few team of the season cards on FIFA Ultimate Team, which, you know, goes to show what kind of form he's been in previous seasons. I spoke to a journalist from a local paper in Croatia who said that from what they understand, Burnley have had a low offer rejected. Dinamo would probably be looking for around 10 million to sell. He's a 29-year-old. Now, I actually reached out to Dinamo Zagreb and also to his agent, Branko Husićka, and I asked for information on this and to gain some clarity on the situation, whether a bid was gone in. But both have not got back to me, playing it cool. You know, not kind of... to be honest, I'm sort of speculating, but, you know, sometimes when these agents and clubs don't talk on a situation, it means there's stuff going on behind the scenes. You know, that's not necessarily the case with Orsic, but since I started working on transfers, you know, when I see a local paper from a foreign club reporting on a transfer, you know, it's usually come from good source or good knowledge that, you know, there is something going on. So Orsic is one to keep an eye on, but as I tweeted last night, which sent a few Burnley fans crazy, there's a few plates spinning, which is turning out to be one of my favourite sayings on these videos. Burnley are working on a few things behind the scenes. I've spoken to a number of agents that have had dialogue with Burnley over potentially trying to get their client to move to the Premier League. There's been a few interesting ones of the window, actually. I know Aaron Ramsey was proposed to Burnley earlier in the window, but the player wasn't really keen on joining. You know, there was that weird link last summer with Weston McKennie. There is a link there of, you know, agents proposing these players to Burnley. I do think Aaron Ramsey's wages would probably be slightly out of Burnley's depth. Same situation with Ross Barkley last year. On deadline day, Burnley were looking at a late deal for Ross Barkley, but the wages and the finances didn't quite add up in terms of sharing his salary with Chelsea. See, Chelsea were keen to get him off the books, and they'd probably be keen to do so this time around, but he's on quite a significant pay packet at Chelsea. So Burnley are obviously working on restricted finances, and they're also cautious of the fact if they went down, you know, they don't want to have high wages on the books in the Championship, because that can be, you know, pretty much soul destroying if, you know, you've got a situation where you're struggling to pay wages or struggling to make room and you can't offload a player in the Championship who's your top earner. It can be a massive hindrance, particularly if you're trying to get back up to the Premier League. But like I said, I know Burnley have got a few things going on. They've looked at Guirassy, the striker at Stade Rennes, scored twice at the weekend. Not sure that deal's viable at the moment, but from the information I've got, Burnley looking at a central midfielder. Obviously, they had a bid rejected from Lens for Seko Fofana. The thinking there was obviously Maxwell Cornet's been excellent since he arrived. 6 goals in 10 games. Fofana's also Ivorian, but not away at the African Cup of Nations. He's been one of the best players in the French division this season. So Burnley are willing to shop overseas. A lot of the Premier League sort of inquiries they've made have not really come to anything. So they're now set to explore the European market a bit more. And from what I expect, I think Burnley will get a few in through the door. Just moving on now to a few more little sound bites on my column. One story I done this morning was Steven Bergwijn's future. Obviously, he was set to leave Tottenham, really. Not set to leave, but Ajax sold David Neres to Shakhtar Donetsk to fund the deal. And Fabio Paratici has been working on a few sales in order to free up some cash for Tottenham to spend. And there's been extensive negotiations with Ajax, who made quite a low offer, I think around £15 million or 15 million euros for Bergwijn. They really want to bring him back to the Eredivisie where he was before with PSV Eindhoven. Problem is, Tottenham signed him for 27 million, and they don't really want to take a £12 million hit on him when he's still a player of significant value, really, given he's only 24 and he's still got quite big potential. But obviously, after his incredible heroics last night, in which he scored twice in 80 seconds to snatch a victory for Spurs on the road at Leicester, he now looks set to stay at Tottenham. Now, Antonio Conte wanted to keep him, but the problem was Paratici was kind of in a position where it was either Bergwijn stays and there's kind of minimal chance to sign a new winger, or Bergwijn goes and that opens up more financial room to go for Adama Traore. It's a deal that Spurs are still working on at the moment. Obviously, many people are kind of like, especially Spurs fans, are like, look, we haggled over a loan to buy last season. Wolves didn't do it, so why are we still hesitating on that, 6 months later? I think Conte, obviously, is pretty much common knowledge now that Conte wants Adama and sees him as a right wing back. He could really elevate his game to the next level. Seen what Conte's done with Achraf Hakimi at Inter Milan and Victor Moses during his time at Chelsea. I think Adama could be a different animal in that position, but Bergwijn looks set to get a fair crack now at Spurs. I think this is a chance for him to really build on what has been a difficult start to life at Tottenham. Obviously, Heung-min Son's out injured at the moment as well, and Tottenham have got a lot of games to play in the Premier League. I think they've only played 19, which is obviously the halfway mark. So it wouldn't make sense for Spurs to really offload Bergwijn if there's not, a guaranteed replacement already on hand to sign, and there simply isn't. I've not seen a lot of players linked with Tottenham in terms of, credible, reliable, genuine interest. So I expect Bergwijn to stay now, and Conte's been pushing for that. But, the board kind of had other plans, but I do think that 2 goals last night has swayed the situation. A few other bits now. Just onto my column. I know Djed Spence, player who a lot of Premier League clubs are taking interest in. I know there's talk Tottenham, Arsenal, Southampton and Brighton are having a look. But from what I understand, Brentford are one of the clubs that are having a real... They're casting an eye over Spence. He's now on loan at Nottingham Forest, who have agreed to keep him for the rest of the season. Middlesbrough are the club he belongs to. Chris Wilder would love to have him back at the Riverside, but it looks like he'll probably earn a Premier League move in the summer. I think Middlesbrough would probably accept around sort of 12 to 15 million pounds for him, but he's a real prospect at fullback. He was excellent in the FA Cup against Arsenal. So yeah, that's one to keep an eye on. I think we've pretty much covered the majority of other stories from my column. There was Pablo Mari and Robin Olsen having medicals at Udinese and Aston Villa earlier in the week. See, those deals have now been completed. Should have mentioned this at the start of the video, but in all my videos, the link will be in the description and the timings along here for you to skip to the bit on your club if you don't want to listen to the full video. As ever, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, share on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Taylor Sport. Keep up to date with all the latest transfer news on the Daily Express website and our social media channels. And yeah, hopefully next time I speak, we won't mention Diego Carlos or some of the other stories we keep going over, but they're threatening to rumble on. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you soon.